Hey everyone, I'm Hannah. I am a doctor working in internal medicine. My interests include obesity, metabolic health, heart disease, cholesterol, etc. Um, I have done a bit of research on this when I was in medical school, but I really became interested in this topic once I fixed a lot of my own chronic health issues. Um, so I hope this talk is informative. And I'm not pretending that I know everything. I'm going to link a lot of additional information for you to learn more and connect the dots a bit more. But this is my understanding of heart disease and fat. And I'm going to propose two things today. One is heart attacks is not caused by high cholesterol. And number two, naturally occurring fat is healthy, including egg yolks, animal fat, butter. Okay, so before I delve into it, I'm going to just talk a little bit about my health story. I suffered from a lot of health issues for the past decade or for like 7 years, 8 years. And I used to be on a lot of medications, painkillers almost every day. I had endometriosis symptoms, so during my periods, I would take about seven, eight, nine painkillers even. And there was a point where I developed resistance to the painkillers, and the only thing that helped was passing out. Um, I used to be on antacid tablets for my acid reflux, and all of these health issues used to give me a lot of anxiety and mental health issues as well. Because my understanding was that chronic health issues don't really get better, they just get progressively worse, and you just need to manage the symptoms. And I went to a lot of doctors. I spoke to a lot of my colleagues when in medical school. I did a lot of scans, blood tests, everything was normal, and that obviously made me quite depressed. Um, and it really affected my mental health. And there were times when I thought it's better to just die than to live in this kind of pain, because that's the kind of pain I was in. And I spoke to my one of my psychiatry colleagues saying I'm quite worried about my health. I have mental health issues in the family, and I'm a bit scared. And she told me that I seem fine and I should just keep myself busy. I should keep myself distracted from the pain. Anyway, thankfully, I have been able to move on from that, and I've been able to reverse most of my health issues, all of my health issues. I do have a bit of anxiety from working full time as a doctor, but I've been pain free for most of the past 2 years, and that's all because I changed my diet. And I used to eat a really healthy diet as recommended by the nutritional guidelines, very low fat. I did not eat meat, I did not eat butter, I did not eat coconut oil. I ate really, really, really low fat. I didn't eat any fat for 10 years. Butter was something I was literally scared of. I thought I would get a heart attack immediately if I ate butter. Most of my meals were based on whole grains. I would eat brown bread for breakfast. I would eat oats. I would eat ragi. I would eat a lot of whole wheat chapatis and lentils. I would eat a lot of vegetables. I used to eat so much vegetables that my friends would ask me, "What is wrong with you?" And I thought I was being healthy. I would eat plant based protein powders to supplement my protein intake because I used to go to the gym. Um, and I only used to use heart healthy refined vegetable oils for cooking, and that too in very, very small amounts. Um, and then I made one simple diet change, which is I stopped using vegetable oils. I stopped consuming them, and I started consuming ghee, butter, and eggs instead. And it was an automatic 360 turnaround. Now I eat a fairly high fat diet with healthy carbohydrates and good quality proteins. No protein powder, I just eat real protein from meat, eggs, etc. So let's talk about dietary fat, okay? So, based on chemistry, you can divide dietary fat into saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated fats. So, we think saturated fat is horrible, terrible. Truth is that all three fats are good. Saturated fat is the one that's has less double bonds, and polyunsaturated fats have a lot of double bonds in them. So it's just a chemistry based classification, and that's it. And we actually need polyunsaturated fats as well. So in the you know, low carb, high fat groups, polyunsaturated fats are demonized, but we need omega 3s and even a bit of omega 6. So, omega 6 is not that bad unless it's in excess through consumption of vegetable oils. So, omega 3 we know is super essential. Um, so, the thing is, omega 3 comes in two bioavailable forms, EPA and DHA. The thing is that that is available only through animal foods or algae. So, flax seeds, chia seeds, which is a vegan omega 3, is ALA, which is not a bioavailable form of omega 3. Only about 7 to 10% gets converted into the bioavailable forms that we need. So, if you're vegan, please consider taking an algal oil supplement. Now, the thing about vegetable oils, right? So, if we have a balance between omega 3 and omega 6, then we will have a balance of inflammation versus anti inflammation. Because omega 3s produce anti inflammatory particles and omega 6 produces pro inflammatory particles. Whereas if this balance gets tipped, and we have too much omega 6, which is the case now in the modern human diet, we have way too much omega 6, then that produces a lot of pro inflammatory chemicals. And inflammation is the root cause of every single disease that we see today, autoimmune diseases, diabetes, cancer, obesity. So we need to really curb inflammation in our body. Now I'm going to go over two arguments against fat. Number one argument is fat is high in calories, therefore it's going to make you fat. Now, this is an excellent way for the food industry to produce low fat, low calorie, processed packaged shit that people will eat to think they will lose weight. But you need to realize that the way that calories are calculated is by putting a piece of food, such as a biscuit, into this bomb calorimeter. Okay, a bomb calorimeter literally explodes that piece of food and sees how much energy is released in kilojoules and then converts it into kilocalories. It's safe to say that we humans do not process food in that way. We process food through digestive enzymes that are secreted in the digestive tract. Okay? And this is something we have learned in primary school. Carbohydrates get broken down into sugars. Lipids get broken down into fatty acids. Proteins get broken down into amino acids. This happens with the help of enzymes, okay? And then we get the simplest form of each macronutrient. And then energy is not produced through combustion, it's produced through complex biochemical processes that happen in the mitochondria. So, we all know mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right? So, mitochondria produce ATP, and ATP is the energy currency in our body. And how does the mitochondria do that? It can burn sugar, it can burn fat, it can even burn proteins, amino acids. Okay, so let's talk about how efficiently mitochondria can burn fat. We all want to burn fat. Fat burning is good. So it seems that mitochondria efficiently burn monounsaturated and saturated fats, producing a lot of ATP. But polyunsaturated fats are difficult for the mitochondria to process, especially if there's a lot of double bonds in those polyunsaturated fats. So These vegetable oils have a lot of double bonds in them. They're highly unstable and it's difficult for our mitochondria to process. Why? Because it releases a lot of free radicals. Free radicals are these free electrons present in those double bonds that release a lot of that generate a lot of oxidative stress, thereby damaging the mitochondria. This is really important to understand. So, vegetable oils damage the mitochondria and it prevents our body from producing enough energy properly. Okay, now another thing that damages mitochondria is also excess consumption of sugar. So, now let's talk about the different macronutrients. So, we know carbohydrates break down into sugar. What makes you fat? So, a blood sugar spike releases insulin from the body, okay? And that insulin tells the body to store that energy as fat. Insulin is essentially a fat storing hormone. And insulin has a lot of functions in the body, but essentially it reduces blood sugar spikes, okay? And carbohydrates are the single macronutrient that promote insulin secretion. And this is not always a bad thing, okay? Um, but if that keeps happening, then you can imagine what will happen, and I will explain. So, as you can see, fat is actually the macronutrient that spikes our blood sugar the least and causes the least amount of insulin spikes. And the best example I can say against the dietary guidelines is 1980. Look at what happened when the low fat dietary guidelines were introduced. Obesity shot up because why? When you eat low fat food, it spikes your insulin and it causes you to gain weight. It's as simple as that. Especially refined carbohydrates, sugar. Okay, you don't eat enough fat, you don't eat enough protein, you just eat your whole grains and your carbs, it will spike your insulin. Another thing is if you're constantly eating throughout the day, snacking, each meal that you eat spikes your insulin. So the best thing you can do is eat 2 to 3 satiating, high fat, moderate protein, moderate carbohydrate, healthy carbohydrate meals in a day. There are other factors as well, such as stress. Um, so, stress itself can cause sugar spikes, which can cause weight gain as well. And another thing is when you eat something that's really high in sugar, your blood sugar goes really high and then it comes down. And when your blood sugar goes down, your body is put under stress, it releases a lot of cortisol, and then it goes up again, and you're just on a blood sugar roller coaster. And then inflammation. Inflammation is a major factor that can cause weight gain. And any processed food causes inflammation. There are hundreds and thousands of ingredients that are there in these processed packaged foods: emulsifiers, artificial sweeteners, unnatural processed protein powders, unnatural refined oils. These refined oils are present in everything. And there are 100,000 types of sugars. They have different names for it, but it's all just sugar, including your cereals. So that's about food. And who told us that saturated fat causes heart disease? It's this man called Mr. Ansel Keys in 1953. He published this graph of 7 countries and plotted the dietary fat intake versus heart attack deaths. Truth is that he had collected data from 22 countries and he found no correlation whatsoever. What he did then is remove whatever data didn't fit his hypothesis and then published only what he wanted. In my opinion, that's scientific fraud. And his 7 country study is still believed by doctors and nutritionists today, and they still say saturated fat is bad for you. And the truth is that he tested this out with things like margarine. And if you want to learn more about the history, I highly recommend the book The Big Fat Surprise. It's an investigative journalism piece that goes into detail about all the clinical trials that were done which tested this hypothesis about saturated fat and cholesterol. And Dr. Kate Shanahan has also released this book called Dark Calories, which talks about vegetable oils and the history of American Heart Association and why it promotes these horrible oils. And I also want to discuss this paradox that I was taught about in medical school. I was told that the French people, they eat a really, really rich diet that's high in saturated fat. That's true. They eat a lot of cheese, they eat a lot of butter. They literally eat duck that is fried in duck fat, chicken liver with a lot of butter, and they have the lowest risk of heart disease in the world. And if you want more evidence, look at this graph. This is a graph of saturated fat consumption in Europe versus um, heart disease deaths. And if you look, there's an inverse correlation. Those who consume more saturated fats in Europe have lower heart disease deaths. Are you still not convinced? I highly recommend reading this paper, which is a meta analysis of all the randomized controlled trials, which studied the effect of low fat, saturated fat, etc. And a really famous trial studied the low fat diet, heart healthy low fat diet versus a normal diet. And those who had a low fat diet had 26% higher risk of heart attacks. And that was the only statistically significant finding in the paper. And that was not published in the results. How convenient. And there was another study, Minnesota coronary experiment, where they replaced margarine saturated fat, trans fat free margarine, which is saturated. They replaced it with corn oil. And the studies showed that those who had corn oil did have lower cholesterol. They absolutely did, but then they had higher risk of death and cancer. And this research was hidden in a basement and recovered by scientists years later. And all this is discussed in these some of these books. I also want to discuss this other study that was done in around 2000 farmers. They followed up 2000 farmers for 12 years, and they looked at different groups of farmers, three groups. One of them who consumed a liberal amount of butter, cream, and full fat dairy products. One of them consumed them occasionally, and one of them was very health conscious and heart healthy. So they consumed skimmed milk and they didn't consume any butter, they only consumed low fat dairy. And the study found that those who consumed more butter and more cream had 100% less incidence of abdominal obesity compared to the low fat group. And I want to explain why this is the case. If you look at this graph on the left side, coffee with skim milk versus whole milk. Skim milk spikes your blood sugar while whole milk does not. And we know that blood sugar spike equals insulin spike equals weight gain. Okay. And I'm also going to go over this study because this wonder weight loss drug called Ozempic has been making the headlines lately. So, Ozempic is essentially stimulating this thing called GLP-1. GLP-1 stimulates satiety. Okay. And it regulates your appetite. So, those who take this drug will have lower appetite and that will help them lose a lot of weight. Now, this study looked at the GLP-1 response to various foods. And as you can see here, pork fat stimulates your GLP-1 and so does olive oil. Potato does not stimulate your GLP-1 and neither does vegetable oil. So my conclusion is that if you eat a high fat diet, it's similar to taking this Ozempic. Now, the second assumption is that eating a diet high in fat will increase your cholesterol and you will get a heart attack. So, I hope I've convinced you that dietary fat is actually quite healthy if it's a naturally occurring fat. Now, let's talk about cholesterol. Okay, so we've got HDL cholesterol, which is good cholesterol, and then they say that LDL cholesterol is bad cholesterol. Truth is that cholesterol is a very complicated topic, and there are hundreds of different types of cholesterols. Not cholesterols, lipoproteins. So HDL is a particle that carries cholesterol, and LDL is also a particle that carries cholesterol inside. It's actually a protein. Okay. Now let's talk about let's talk about a little bit about this lipoprotein cholesterol situation. So you need to realize that most of the cholesterol our body needs is produced by the liver in the body. Okay, because cholesterol is very essential. We need cholesterol. Every cell in the body needs cholesterol. So if you don't eat any fat, if you eat a low fat diet, then the liver will be like, okay, I'm not getting enough cholesterol, I need to produce more cholesterol, and it does its job, and it starts producing a lot more cholesterol. So eating a low fat diet essentially puts a strain on your liver to produce more cholesterol. So this liver produces cholesterol and then puts it into these lipoproteins. Okay, these lipoproteins such as VLDL, IDL, and LDL. So VLDL, IDL, and LDL is essentially the same thing. VLDL turns into IDL and IDL turns into LDL. So the function of these lipoproteins is to transport cholesterol to different parts of the body that need it. Okay, which parts of the body need it? Lots of parts. Our heart needs it. So LDL actually transports CoQ10, which is a really important antioxidant made from cholesterol, to the heart. It transports free fatty acids to the muscle. It transports cholesterol to the adrenal glands. It transports it to the ovaries, to the testes, because a lot of steroid hormones are produced from cholesterol. So it has a lot of functions. Okay. It also carries fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, K, and these fat soluble vitamins have a lot of important functions in immunity, in heart health, and yeah. So basically, it's really important. Um, and 75% of our cholesterol actually is produced in our body itself because it's so essential, and 25% of it comes from diet. If you're eating a high fat diet, then the body will be like, okay, I don't need to make so much cholesterol. Let me just not produce as much. Now, little bit about dyslipidemia. So when you eat a high carbohydrate, low fat diet, what happens is that your HDL goes down, your triglycerides go up, your VLDL goes up. And this is seen in the case of insulin resistance. And when you eat a high fat, low carbohydrate diet, you get a high HDL cholesterol, which is a good thing. You get low triglyceride. And many times we actually see increased LDL cholesterol in some individuals. Truth is that total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol does not matter as much as HDL cholesterol and triglycerides in predicting heart attack risk. And let's talk a bit more about cholesterol. The brain produces its own cholesterol. So why would the brain produce something that is so bad? Is the brain stupid? Why is it producing cholesterol? Because it's made of fat. Brain is mostly made of fat. And that's why high cholesterol is actually associated with lower risk of dementia. And it's essential nutrient. Cholesterol is an essential nutrient needed by every single cell in the body. And anyone who's studied physiology knows this. So, in the animal kingdom, if you look at the most nourishing foods, they're all rich in fats. So, if you look at breast milk, right, human breast milk or any breast milk that mammals produce, it is totally rich in fat, cholesterol, saturated fat. Why? Because it must be that nourishing. Even egg yolk is meant to nourish a new life, and it's got tons of vitamins, minerals, cholesterol, fat. Why? Because it's so essential for life, especially for animal life. We need cholesterol. And I would like to show this study that shows that actually most people who have a heart attack have low LDL cholesterol levels, less than 100. And this is what I saw when I researched metabolic syndrome in third year of medical school, and this is what I see in my daily practice as well. Most people have a low cholesterol already, still they come to the hospital with a heart attack. And this is an excellent study, a meta analysis of hundreds of studies, 1.5 million people. And look at the graphs. High cholesterol has nothing to do with heart disease and mortality, but smoking and diabetes is the real risk factor. And another study, again, look at type 2 diabetes and lipoprotein insulin resistance. Both of these are the most important factors that predict your risk of heart disease. And this was followed up for 21 years. And if you look at LDL cholesterol, it's at the bottom. There's barely any correlation there. And statins, they lower your cholesterol, but how effective are they at reducing your risk of heart attack? 0.39%. I mean, 0.39% is almost insignificant. And I'm not going to go too much into the side effects of statin, but I'll share some links below. Every single patient I see with a heart attack or stroke has insulin resistance and is already on a statin. So then, if heart attack is caused by high cholesterol, shouldn't statin reduce risks of heart attack? For that patient, our doctors have come up with an excellent term called residual risk, because we like to put a fancy term to everything. Instead of saying that, look, statins didn't work, we want to consider other risk factors that might be contributing to heart disease risk. So they say give them some omega 3s, control some inflammation by giving them some anti inflammatory drugs. If someone's got obesity and diabetes, give them some drugs, platelets, coagulation. There's lots of factors about how to tackle residual risk in a patient who presents with heart attack. I would also like to point out another study here. And by now, you should be convinced that cholesterol is not an enemy, it's your friend. But this is a study done in 12.8 million adults. Low cholesterol increases your risk of death by a significant amount. If you look at the left side of the graph, those who have low cholesterol have much higher risk of death. And high cholesterol between 200 to 260 is associated with the lowest mortality. If this doesn't convince you, I don't know what will, because this is a study in 12.8 million people. And now let's go a little bit more into LDL cholesterol. So, they measure the amount of cholesterol that is being carried by the lipoprotein particles. Okay, so it's not telling you how many particles are carrying that cholesterol, it's just telling you how much cholesterol is being carried. It's not telling you the size of these particles. It's not telling you how much of these particles are getting damaged. And if you want to know more, I highly recommend this paper published in, I don't know what journal, but good. Um, so there's large LDL and then there's small LDL. Large LDL is healthy, it is fluffy, and it carries a lot of cholesterol, but it doesn't deposit in arteries because it's large. It's difficult for it to deposit in arteries. Damaged small LDL definitely gets deposited in the arteries, and that is the risky type of cholesterol. So, if you do an LDL cholesterol, it's telling you that you've got a lot of cholesterol, but it's not telling you anything more. So, it's really a poor indicator of cardiovascular health. You have to look at other factors such as blood sugars, HDL cholesterol, triglycerides. And how does LDL get damaged? LDL gets damaged through modification, glycation, and oxidation. So, glycation is essentially when sugar gets stuck to the molecule. You know, when you put when you put sugar on your hand, put a little bit of water and sugar, and it sticks. That's what sugar does to every single protein in the body. And that is why diabetes affects every single organ in the body. Okay? And It also makes this LDL more susceptible to oxidation. And another source of oxidation from a diet perspective is, as I mentioned, vegetable oils. It's difficult for our body to process vegetable oils because it's really, really high in polyunsaturated double bonds. And these double bonds release the electrons and keep generating a lot of oxidative stress. They damage the mitochondria, they contribute to obesity. So, a whole lot of problems. But there are other factors as well: stress, emotional trauma, pollution. So, this diagram shows you exactly what happens to the LDL and why it ends up in the artery. So, LDL gets damaged, and actually, that damaged LDL is bad for you. Okay, your cells know that. Your WBCs, your macrophages, are a specific type of white blood cells that try to clear out bad things from your blood. They're actually just trying to help. Okay, so this macrophage knows that damaged LDL is bad for you, so it picks up that damaged LDL because it doesn't want that damaged LDL to be circulating in the bloodstream because it's potentially toxic. Okay, but when that macrophage picks up that damaged LDL, it becomes something called a foam cell, and that foam cell is what deposits in your arteries. Okay, so LDL is not really the bad guy, it's the inflammation, it's the damage that is causing this LDL to go and deposit in the arteries. And if you're still not convinced, look at this trial. This is a randomized controlled trial done in a low carb, high fat group versus a normal diet group. So they followed up um, these people who were on a ketogenic diet for 4 years. Okay, some of them had really, really, really high LDLs. Some of them had LDLs up to 600. If a cardiologist saw that, they would probably have a heart attack. But these people did not have a heart attack. They underwent a CT angiogram, okay, which is the most sensitive test to pick up any sort of plaque or any blockage, and all of them had zero plaques in an angiogram. So that tells me that LDL cholesterol, which is not telling you the particles, okay? LDL cholesterol, LDL total cholesterol can be high, but you can still be very healthy and not have any heart attack because that healthy big LDL is carrying a lot of cholesterol in your body, but it's just carrying it through the bloodstream. It's not getting deposited anywhere, okay? It's just transporting cholesterol to different parts of the body that need it. And if you're still not convinced, look at this study. So, if you look at the bottommost arm, the people who had the highest risk of heart attack had low LDL cholesterol and high number of LDL particles. And the people who had lowest risk of heart attack had a high LDL cholesterol and low LDL particles. So that's the kind of pattern that you want to see for your cholesterol. And if you want to know what kind of pattern you have in your cholesterol, you have to do an advanced lipid profile. And to get that healthy high LDL cholesterol and low LDL particles, the diet that works is a high fat, low carbohydrate diet and reducing your insulin resistance. So, in summary, cholesterol is essential to life. There's no evidence that LDL cholesterol causes heart attacks because it only tells you the amount of cholesterol being carried by the LDL particles. What you want is a high HDL cholesterol and a low triglyceride. A high LDL cholesterol will make you live long, happy, and healthy. So, vegetable oils, they do lower your cholesterol, but taking cholesterol out of the arteries, out of the bloodstream, and into a plaque is not a good thing. Okay, so it's just death by low cholesterol is not a good thing. And vegetable oils are the most processed food in our diet these days. It's even worse than sugar. And here are a few graphs to show you. Look at the cancer incidence in Japan with vegetable oil consumption. It's directly correlated. Look at the diabetes incidence in Japan with vegetable oil consumption. This is despite of reduction of carbohydrates and sugar. So, if there is one thing that you should eliminate from your diet, it is refined vegetable oils and all the packaged foods that come laden with vegetable oils. And the next thing I would say that you should eliminate from your diet is all of the artificial sweeteners and emulsifiers and lecithins and all of that, but also sugar, white sugar, even natural sugar. If you're addicted to it, it's better to reduce slowly and wean yourself off of it. So I hope this talk was useful, and I'll share some useful links down below. Thank you.